Hello guys and welcome back to Planet 40k. We got 20 more needed changes for the Necron Codex. Now we're doing 20 more because of popular demand. There was loads of comments in the last video with lots more ideas. And also shout out to one of our members, Joe M, for helping me provide this video for you today. Now most of the points in today's video are going to be relating to units as opposed to the actual rules and buffs from the actual codex itself. And also stick around to the final one, number 20. It's more of a concept idea. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. So let's kick on with the video. So the first change that I'd implement is the Army of Renown. Now there are some whispers that this may be coming to the Necron faction. As of present we don't have Army of Renown, but what I would like to see with the Army of Renown, having buffs and bonuses for having to destroy a cult only list or maybe even a canoptic only list as well. So we've got two options there for Army of Renown. Now I'm probably going to be doing a video in regards to this at a later date, but for now this is the first change I'd like to see in this video. Second one, now we did speak about the Royal Warden in the previous video with the points decrease, but I wanted to go back to the Royal Warden and implement a second change. Now I don't think it should be a HQ selection within our codex. There's not enough room for having a Royal Warden, even though his ability is really good. There's just not enough room once you've got a noble character, once you've got one of your Cryptek models, maybe a Scorpic Lord. There's not any room to be getting a Royal Warden. So either one of these options is what I would like to see. Either you make him an elite option. Now this one isn't my preferred option out of the three here because of course the elite selections are quite competitive as well. You've got the flayed ones in that selection, you've got your Catan Shards, your Lichguard and of course your Scorpic Destroyer, so it's going to be quite competitive there already. The second option, I saw this a lot in the comments, it wasn't something that I thought of, and it's simply to make him a champion of a selected troop choice. So if you've got your Necron Warriors or your Necron Immortals, possibly even your Lichguard, very similar to how Space Marines have sergeants within their Space Marine units, the Royal Warden would simply act as one of those sergeants, giving that fall back and shoot or fall back and charge buff to that selected unit. This way it's not going to cost a HQ slot, it's not even going to cost an elite slot, and it'll be simply an upgrade. Then the third option, if you've got a noble on the tabletop, then he simply just shouldn't take up a slot whatsoever. It should simply say if your detachment includes a noble unit, then your Royal Warden can be included in the detachment without taking up an additional battlefield role slot. Very simple, that's the best way of doing it in my opinion. Let's move on to number 3, which is the Ghoststart. Now we spoke about the Ghoststart in the previous video as well. I mentioned that it could potentially have other units that can go inside the Ghoststart, and maybe the Ghoststart's capacity could be moved to 20. However, I completely forgot about the main thing here, which is giving it open topped. It used to have open topped in previous editions, where the warriors that are inside the Ghoststart can simply fire out with their weapons. Now the Drukhari are the main faction that are able to do that. They get to shoot out of their open top raiders. So I think this would be a welcomed addition if the Necron Codex got some sort of open top vehicle as well. Now secondly, with the Ghoststart, why not give it the option of having the Ghost Reaper arrays rather than just having the Ghost Flayer arrays? Most people that I've spoke to that play Necrons do prefer the Ghost Reapers, so it would be kind of cool if the Ghoststart could also take these to match up with the rest of your list. Next on the agenda is the Catacomb Command Barge. Now in previous editions, quite a long time ago now, these things used to be a transport option for your Overlord models. It wasn't just your Overlord models, it was your infantry character models. They were able to use the Catacomb Command Barge as a mode of transport. They can simply hop out of this transport and the Catacomb Command Barge goes off and does its own thing. I think this would be quite cool to bring back, because once the barge is destroyed, the Overlord model can simply hop out and then continue as normal, which I think was pretty cool in the old days. I'd love to see that one back. On to the Lichguard. Now this was another comment that we had in the previous video in fact. Why aren't Lichguard able to mix and match their war gear? We've always got to have that dilemma, whether we want to take the war scythe, so we want to go choppy, or are we going to be taking the dispersion shields, but they only come with the hyperphase swords, which only damage 1. Now I would love to see the option of having the war scythe with the dispersion shields. Now of course that would come at a cost. I wouldn't mind paying the extra points for that combination, so that's something I would quite like to see in the near future. Now the only argument I can see against this point is maybe the fact that the war scythes are two-handed options that could become problematic, but there must be a way of doing this. So Deathmarks, they've got the synaptic disintegrators, which are heavy 1. Now I personally think these weapons should be heavy 2. Now some people will disagree with me here. I just don't think they do enough damage when they've only got 1 shot per model. 2 shots per model for me is where they should be at. Even if you gave them a slight point increase to maybe 20 points per model, I'm okay with that, but 2 shots I think is needed. Next we have the Triarch Praetorians. One of those units that I'm not very keen on. I don't really play Triarch Praetorians an awful lot. They just don't seem to fit in any of my lists. They of course don't get the dynasty code because they're dynastic agents, and they don't get an invuln save either, and you can't even give an invuln save with them even with a Chronomancer because they need to be within the same dynasty as the actual Chronomancer himself. So that's why I don't use them, but something to think about, why can't they have the noble keyword? Now we kind of lack the noble keyword, and it is kind of relevant because it relates to our command protocols. And as far as the lore is concerned, the Praetorians act as judges and enforcers of their ancient lore, ensuring that all the Necron dynasties uphold their terms of the ancient codes so that they are never forgotten. Now I am reading that from Google, I'm not massive on the lore as you know, but for me these guys are quite higher ups if they're judges and enforcers of their lore, so therefore I think they should have the noble keyword. Let me know in the comments below if you agree with me on that one. On to all the Destroyer cult units next. Now this one I may be reaching slightly. I think they should all have an invuln save. I don't know what that invuln save would be, maybe just a 5+ invuln save. But the fact that none of them have an invuln save is quite disappointing. In fact, apart from the vehicles and the Canoptic race, we kind of do suffer from having lack of invuln saves if I'm honest. A lot of other codexes and factions are army wide with their invuln saves, so I would like to see this kind of change happen with Destroyer cult units. Tomb Blades are next, and they've kind of become a redundant unit within the 9th edition because they're competing with the Canoptic Wraiths and the Canoptic Scarabs in terms of the fast attack slots. And we're not selecting them because they're quite expensive at 25 points per model and they've only got 2 wounds. So very simply, make them slightly cheaper per model or give them 3 wounds per model. That would slightly make them a little bit better. They're a little bit too squishy for me. I don't really want to be spending 25 points a model just to simply get that 14-inch movement. Next we've got the Canoptic Plasmacytes. Now I'm going to shout Joe M out again here. This was one of his personal inputs, and he simply said let them be an upgrade to a Destroyer unit rather than having them as a separate unit. So there are pros and cons to doing this, and here's what they are. So the pros of course is that the Canoptic Plasmacyte is going to always be with that Destroyer cult unit, because sometimes you find that you say your Scorpic Destroyers make their charge move and then your Plasmacyte doesn't, it's left behind, and then in that same morale phase of that turn the Plasmacyte simply dies because it's not within 6 inches of a friendly Destroyer cult unit. So if it was just an attachment of the Destroyer cult unit, then of course it will always be a part of that unit. Then furthermore, you can obviously select how you're going to delegate damage when you're taking damage to that unit. So if you're being targeted from a damage 3 weapon and you fail the saves, instead of removing the Scorpic Destroyer, you can simply remove the Plasmacyte. Now there are cons to this. The first con of course, the Plasmacyte used to be able to eat up all the Overwatch. Now I know Overwatch isn't a massive thing in this edition, but it used to tank all the Overwatch. Now of course you can still do that if it's part of the actual unit. But if the unit causes more damage than the Plasmacyte's worth, it's going to be of course going on to your actual Scorpic Destroyers as well as the Plasmacyte. So that's something we could do with the Canoptic Plasmacyte. Now next I want to talk about the Ghost Reapers with our Necron Warriors. Currently only got a 12-inch range. Could this possibly be 15-inch range, maybe even 18-inch range? I mean even your shooter boys from the Orc faction have got an 18-inch range, yet our Necrons with the Ghost Reapers only have a 12-inch range, so I would like to see this one increased. I wouldn't mind having the 15-inch because with the Mefrit Dynasty that would go up to 18-inch, but having the full 18-inch range I think gets these guys firing, especially turn 1 and turns 2, when sometimes they're not actually in range of anything and they've not got a target. On to something a bit more universal within the Codex, which is the leadership. Now Necrons are notorious for having the leadership value of a 10. Now that is still breakable, especially with those Necron Warriors or the flayed ones. In my opinion, we should just auto pass morale. We shouldn't have to take morale tests. We know not to be running away from battle, and Necrons obey their code that's built within them, so an auto pass in the morale phase is more ideal. Looking at the Canoptic units, kind of questioning why they went down to a 4+ to hit with the weapon skill and ballistic skill. This edition they went down to a 4+. They previously were a 3+, there wasn't really much of an explanation to why this has happened. For me, put them back to a 3+, they don't really need to be on a 4+, so that's what I do with the Canoptic units. Now as for some of our bigger stuff, they lack quantum shielding, so you've got the Silent King, the Monolith, the Obelisk and the Tesseract Bolt, all of which do not have the quantum shielding ability. Now of course the Silent King as well as the Tesseract Bolt do have an invuln save, so it's not as bad with those 2 units, but they still can be wounded on less than a 4+. But I would like to see in particular the Monolith having that quantum shield ability for that invuln save. Then furthermore with the Monolith, why not give it fly? It used to have fly in previous editions. It is effectively a fly Monolith, it just doesn't have the fly keyword. At the start of the edition I thought this was an error within the Codex, but that doesn't seem to be the case. They've just lost the fly keyword. For me, bring it back. You've got to remember it's quite a large model and some battlefields are quite condensed with the terrain features, which makes it quite difficult to move around. So giving it the fly ability gives it a little bit more flexibility with that movement. Next I've got a few bones to pick with the HQ selections. Now this one is actually for the Overlord, it's the Tachyon Arrow option. Now you've got to spend 5 points to get this option, and it's once per battle only, and it's D6 damage. Now what I dislike about this is the fact that it's once per battle. Now we've done a recent video which is the Know Your Foe for Tyranids, so we've gone through all the Tyranid options and what you're going to be looking out for, and one of the relics that are highlighted within that video is the Shard Gullet, which replaces a heavy venom cannon. Now let me just read out what the Shard Gullet actually is. So it's a 36-inch range, assault 3, it is strength 12, minus 5 AP, and the damage is a flat 5. Now as I said, this replaces a heavy venom cannon, which can be pretty much taken by the Hive Tyrant, the Flying Hive Tyrant, the Carnifexes, as well as the Flyer, which is Harpy. All of those can take the heavy venom cannon. Now this has got similar stats to our Tachyon Arrow, except the damage is 5, not D6. But more importantly, it can be used in every single battle round. It's not limited to a once per battle only. That for me needs to change. The Tachyon Arrow needs to be used every single battle round. Other codexes have this kind of stuff, so why can't we? Next HQ on the agenda is Orrick the Diviner. You very rarely see this used, maybe in a narrative game. In fact, for me, not even in narrative games, he's pretty bad. He's 110 points and he's effectively a named Chronomancer. But for 110 points for a character that you can't put relics on, you can't put the Cryptic Arcana on, you can't select his Warlord trait, and its main ability rarely comes off. It might come off late game, but by then, if you're going up against Tyranids, for example, you're already tabled by that point. And even if you do pull it off, it's not the greatest deal, it's pretty mediocre at best. So bring this right down to 75 points, that's probably still too much in my opinion, but it would at least help him get some usability from Necron players. Now very similarly, Trazan the Infinite, which is his partner in crime if you've read the book already, which is the Infinite and the Divine. He's effectively an Overlord model with the Dynastic Agents keyword. He's 100 points, he's a little bit too expensive for me. Again, you can't put relics on him, you can't select your Warlord trait, and also you can't select his war gear, so he's stuck with the Empathic Obliterator, which is strength 7 but it's D3 damage. It's only a melee weapon, so it's got no ranged attacks anyway, but I'd rather just take a 95 point Overlord than Trazan the Infinite. So what I would simply do is bring him down to maybe 85 points. You can't really go too much lower than that because he still does provide the My Will Be Done ability, the Relentless March ability. Now I know in the Crusade games it's a complete different story with Trazan the Infinite, but for this video of course we're not talking about Crusade, we're just talking about match play. Okay, on to number 17, which involves the flyers within the Necron Codex. Now I find the Nightside quite a frustrating flyer to be using because once it's just dropped its payload, it becomes quite a redundant flyer. It just flies around. Okay, it's got a bit of Tesla range attacks coming out of it, but they're not doing much damage one, especially going up against certain factions such as Space Marines. So what I would like to see perhaps is maybe condensing both the flyers into one single datasheet with the War Gear option. So you could have a Nightside with the option of taking the heavy death ray but still being a transport option. I think this will make the flyers much more usable within the codex, giving the flyer a bit more flexibility to what it's actually going to be doing within the game. So yeah, I would condense both of these flyers. Number 19 is the Malevolent Arcing Stratagem. It's for 1 command point, only used on the Tesla weapons. Now on a 4+ units within 6 inches of the targeted unit suffer 1 mortal wound. I'd just simply make this D3 mortal wounds, make it a little bit more potent. 1 mortal wound just doesn't seem like a lot in the grand scheme of things, so make it D3 is something I would quite like to see. Now we're on to number 20. Now this one is just a concept. I did hint at this at the start of the video. It's very unlikely that this is going to ever take place in the game, but I just wanted you guys to hear me out with this one and give me your thoughts in the comment section at the end of the video. So currently the Tesseract Bolt and the Obelisk are kind of redundant units. Okay, the Tesseract Bolt does have a little bit of play, but they're both very expensive. They cost a command point to bring because they're of course Lord of War models, and they're never really worth their points. Then I wanted to bring a second problem within this concept, which is having Catan shards. Problems with Catan shards is their delivery. Even though they move at 8 inches, it's usually not enough. They usually get targeted very early from turn 1 onwards. Now yes, they only lose 3 wounds per phase, but by the time they get into the fight, they're probably already dead. If they're not already dead at that point, they're not going to be alive for that much longer. Now especially when you've got these psychic factions such as Tyranids, Thousand Suns, Grey Knights, the Catan Shard's worst nemesis are those psychic factions. So I've got a concept which kind of fixes all 3 of these at the same time. To begin, you get a Tesseract Bolt. Now bear with me, this is going to sound a little bit extreme, but this to me should be a Catan Shard transport. And the way I would play is on any turn, allow 1 single Catan Shard to disembark from the Bolt, and of course this will be a once per battle only. Now once it's disembarked, the Bolt simply becomes an Obelisk. It will lose its Catan powers, it will lose that 4+ invuln save, and then the Catan Shard is a complete new separate unit. So not only does this give the Tesseract Arc and the Obelisk a little bit more playability, but it also helps the deliverance with those Catan Shards, get them into the fight, protecting them of course in those big super heavy vehicles. Now you're probably wondering, what about the points cost? Because the points is 450 for the Tesseract and Obelisk is 330, so that would effectively mean that I'm valuing one of the Catan shards at 120 points. Now you would have seen in the previous video that I would like a reduction on all 3 of these units. The Catan shard I'd probably knock 100 off as 270 to 300 at best. When you compare and say the Nightbringer to other things in other codexes, I mean, take for example the Avatar of Cain from the Eldari faction. He's only 270 points and is probably much better than our Nightbringer. The points will start to add up to what they should do, and funnily enough the Tesseract as well as the Obelisk, they come in the same kit, they come in the same box. It would be nice if the model had some sort of function where it can actually move and turn into one of the other models. I don't think Games Workshop are ever going to be doing that one. But hey, if this concept was an actual thing, I would definitely be wanting to buy a Tesseract Bolt. So guys, let me know in the comments below what you think about this concept. So guys, that's a further 20 points that I would like to change within the Necron Codex. If there's any more, let me know below. Maybe we'll do another video, who knows. And guys, if you have found this video useful, remember to like and remember to subscribe to the channel. Other than that, all that's left to say, thank you all for watching. See you next time.